First Contact Protocol. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the command center of Orbital Defense Platform, vigilant, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that dominated the room. The massive three-dimensional projection showed our solar system in intricate detail, from the sun at its center to the far reaches of the Kuiper Belt. But it was the cluster of red dots moving inward from beyond Neptune's orbit that held everyone's attention. Confirmation on the contact signatures, Lieutenant, Elena asked, her voice steady despite the tension that gripped the command center. Lieutenant David Wong's fingers danced across his console. Confirmed, Captain. We're tracking approximately 3,000 objects, moving in formation. Mass and energy readings consistent with large warships. They're not even trying to hide their approach. Elena's jaw tightened. This was what they had prepared for during the past decade. What all of humanity had sacrificed for, united for. Yet now that the moment had arrived, she felt the weight of billions of lives on her shoulders. Time to Earth orbit, she asked. At current velocity, 17 hours, Captain. Elena nodded and activated the station-wide communication system. All personnel, this is Captain Reyes. Set condition 1 throughout the station. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Around her, the command crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements precise and controlled. There was fear in their eyes. Only a fool wouldn't be afraid. But there was something stronger too. Determination. Resolve. Captain, Communications Officer Sarah Okafor called out, "We're receiving priority transmission from UNDF Command. General Williams is requesting to speak with you. Put him through to my station." The weathered face of General Terrence Williams, Supreme Commander of the United Nations Defense Force, appeared on her screen. His expression was grim, but his eyes held the same steel resolve that Elena felt. "Captain Rice, our deep space observatories have confirmed your readings. The invasion force we've anticipated has finally arrived." "Yes, sir. We're tracking them now. 3,000 vessels at minimum." Williams nodded. "Just as our intelligence predicted. The cracks don't believe in subtlety." He paused, his expression becoming even more serious. "How's the Vigilant holding up?" "All systems nominal, sir. The station is fully operational and ready to fulfill its mission." "Good, because everything we've worked for comes down to the next 24 hours. Williams leaned closer to the screen. "Authorization Omega-7 Delta is now in effect. Commence First Contact Protocol." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. With those words, humanity had officially acknowledged that an alien invasion was underway. "Understood, sir. First Contact Protocol initiated." As the general's image disappeared, Elena turned to her executive officer. "Commander Takeda, transmit the alert to all Earth defense sectors and colonial outposts. Then begin evacuation of all non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters." "Yes, Captain." Elena turned back to the holographic display, watching as the red dots continued their inexorable approach. Her mind drifted back to the day everything changed for humanity, 10 years ago. The cracked scout ship had appeared without warning in Earth orbit, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible until it was directly above North America. The panic that followed was brief but intense, as the alien vessel made no aggressive moves. Instead, it transmitted a simple message in perfect English. "People of Earth, we are the Cracks Imperium. Your world has been noted for future acquisition. Prepare for integration into our empire within one orbital cycle of your world. Resistance is futile and will result in planetary sterilization." Before Earth's military forces could respond, the scout ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, jumping to faster-than-light travel with technology far beyond human capabilities. The message was broadcast worldwide, causing initial panic followed by an unprecedented global unification. For the first time in human history, all nations set aside their differences in the face of an existential threat. The United Nations Defense Force was formed, combining the military resources of all countries under one command structure. Elena had been a young lieutenant then, watching as humanity transformed itself. The next decade saw scientific advancement at a pace never before witnessed. Reverse engineering the limited scan data from the cracked scout ship, combined with humanity's desperate innovation, led to breakthroughs in physics, material science, and weapons technology that would normally have taken centuries. The cracks had given Earth a deadline, believing their technological superiority would make conquest easy. What they didn't account for was human ingenuity when faced with extinction. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet," Lieutenant Okafor announced, pulling Elena from her memories. "It's being broadcast on all frequencies, all languages." "Put it on the main screen." The holographic display shifted, and a humanoid figure appeared. The alien was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and elongated features. 4 black eyes were arranged symmetrically on its face, and a series of bony ridges ran from its forehead to the back of its elongated skull. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move in sync with the words, suggesting some form of translation technology. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Zorith of the Crax Imperium's 7th Conquest Fleet. Your orbital cycle has concluded, and as promised, we have arrived to incorporate your world into our glorious empire." The alien's tone was almost conversational, as if discussing a business transaction rather than planetary conquest. "Your species has been studied and deemed worthy of preservation as a client race. Submit to Crax authority, and you will find us to be benevolent masters. Resist, and you will be subjugated by force." The Admiral paused, its 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "I note with interest that you have established primitive orbital habitats and defensive platforms since our initial contact. While commendable, these efforts are futile. You have 6 of your hours to power down all defensive systems and prepare for the arrival of our integration teams. Failure to comply will result in the demonstration of our power against your population centers." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving an uneasy silence on the command deck. Commander Takeda was the first to speak. "Arrogant bastards, aren't they?" A nervous chuckle rippled through the command center, breaking some of the tension. "They're about to learn that humanity doesn't take well to ultimatums," Elena replied. She opened a secure channel to UNDF Command. "General Williams, we've received the Crax transmission. Request permission to proceed with Phase 1 of Operation Sunburst." Williams' face appeared once more, joined by the 12 members of the United Earth Council, the leadership body formed after first contact. "Permission granted, Captain Reyes," the general responded. "You may deploy our primitive defenses at your discretion." Council President Amara Okonkwo spoke next, her voice carrying the weight of her office. "Captain, what you do in the next few hours will determine the fate of our species. The Council has unanimously authorized the full implementation of Operation Sunburst. May God be with you." Elena acknowledged the authorization and turned to her crew. "You heard them. Let's show the Cracks what these primitive humans can do. Lieutenant Wong, bring all defensive systems online. Commander Takeda, signal all platforms to deploy countermeasures. Lieutenant Okafor, prepare to transmit on my mark." Around Earth, similar scenes played out in command centers, military bases, and government facilities. 10 years of preparation were about to be put to the test. The Crax fleet continued its approach, confident in their technological superiority. Their scans showed limited orbital defenses, a handful of armed space stations, rudimentary kinetic weapons, and a small fleet of what appeared to be early-generation spacecraft. Nothing that could pose a serious threat to a conquest fleet that had subjugated dozens of worlds. What they couldn't detect were the true defenses humanity had created, hidden beneath oceans, inside hollowed-out mountains, and within the seemingly primitive orbital platforms. Earth had spent a decade creating a multi-layered defense system specifically designed to counter Crax technology, based on the data gathered from their scout ship. As Elena watched the enemy fleet approach, her hand moved to the small medallion she wore beneath her uniform, a gift from her grandmother, who hadn't lived to see this day. "For all of us," she whispered. She straightened in her chair and turned to Lieutenant Okafor. "Send our response to the Cracks." The message was simple, transmitted in the Cracks' own language, which human linguists had deciphered years ago. "Admiral Zorith, this is Captain Alina Reyes of Earth Defense. We respectfully decline your offer of integration. Humanity chooses to remain free. We advise you to withdraw your forces immediately." There was no response for several minutes. Then Admiral Zorith's image appeared once more, his expression showing what Alina interpreted as amusement. "Your courage is noted, Captain, but misplaced. As you have chosen resistance, we will now demonstrate the consequence of defiance." 500 Cracks warships broke formation, accelerating toward Earth. According to the intelligence gathered from the scout ship, this was standard Cracks procedure, a show of force designed to break the will of the defending population before the main invasion. Alina took a deep breath and opened a secure channel to all Earth defense installations. "All units, the enemy has committed their first wave. Authorization. Sunburst actual. I repeat, sunburst actual." Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden defenses awoke. The real battle for Earth was about to begin. In the darkness of the command center, Captain Alina Reyes allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of." The counterstrike. The 500 Cracks warships sliced through space toward Earth, their formation perfect after countless successful conquests. Inside his flagship, the inevitable Victory, Admiral Zorith watched with cold satisfaction. The scenario was playing out exactly as it had on dozens of other worlds. A demonstration of overwhelming force followed by the target species' capitulation. "Weapons charged, Admiral," his second-in-command reported. "Targeting systems locked on their major population centers as ordered." "Excellent. Commander Vrax, begin the demonstration strike on their Atlantic defense platform first. Let them witness the futility of resistance before we target their cities." The massive Cracks dreadnought's main cannon powered up, drawing energy from its antimatter core. The weapon could deliver enough firepower to vaporize a small city, and it was aimed directly at Captain Reyes' vigilant platform. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A blinding beam of coherent energy lanced from the dreadnought toward the Earth orbital platform. By all accounts, the primitive human structure should have been instantly vaporized. Instead, the impossible happened. A millisecond before impact, a shimmering field materialized around the platform. When the Cracks energy beam struck this barrier, it didn't explode or penetrate. It refracted, splitting into hundreds of smaller beams that scattered harmlessly into space. "What?" Zorith stood from his command chair, 4 eyes widening in disbelief. "Report." Commander Vrax frantically analyzed the sensor data. "Unknown defensive technology, Admiral. It appears to be some form of metamaterial energy diffraction field. Our weapons, they had no effect." Before Zorith could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple energy signatures detecting across Earth's surface and from their moon. "They're powering up weapons we didn't detect in our scans." On the Vigilant, Captain Reyes watched as the Cracks beam dissipated against their quantum diffraction shields. Technology reversed engineered from the Cracks scout ship, but significantly improved upon by Dr. Marcus Chen and his global research team. "Shield integrity at 97%, Captain," reported Lieutenant Wong. "Diffraction field functioning exactly as designed." Alina nodded, allowing herself a moment of pride in human achievement. Status of Operation Sunburst. Commander Takeda monitored the global tactical display. All systems green. Dr. Chen reports that the lunar defense grid is fully powered and awaiting your command. "The Cracks have had their chance," Alina said firmly. "Transmit attack authorization to all defense sectors. Commence Operation Sunburst." Across Earth and throughout the solar system, humanity's true defenses revealed themselves. Seemingly innocuous weather satellites shed their disguises, transforming into weapon platforms. Beneath the oceans, massive doors opened in the seabed as submarine launch facilities activated. On the far side of the moon, hidden beneath the lunar regolith, arrays of advanced weapon systems powered up. Most surprisingly to the cracks, the primitive orbital defense platforms, including the Vigilant, began to transform. What had appeared to be structural supports unfolded into massive weapon arrays. Sensor-baffling materials dissolved, revealing technology far more advanced than the cracks had believed possible. At Lunar Command, Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a wall of holographic displays, monitoring the activation of his life's work. Chen had been a quantum physicist before first contact, but the arrival of the cracks had transformed him into the architect of humanity's defense systems. All lunar defense stations report ready, Doctor, his assistant informed him. Chen nodded, his expression solemn. For 10 years, he had led the international team that developed the technology that might save humanity. Now it was time to see if their efforts would be enough. Initiate targeting sequence, he ordered. Prioritize their command vessels and heavy weapons platforms. Beneath the lunar surface, massive particle accelerators powered up, generating energy levels that would have been considered impossible a decade earlier. The quantum targeting systems locked onto the cracks vessels, compensating for their movement and defensive capabilities. Firing solution complete, the weapons officer announced, awaiting final authorization. Chen took a deep breath. The fate of our species rests on what we do next. May our children forgive us for the violence we must commit to ensure they have a future. He squared his shoulders. Execute firing sequence. All batteries, fire at will. From the lunar surface, invisible to conventional sensors, streams of hyper-accelerated particles erupted toward the cracks fleet. The weapons had been specifically designed to penetrate crack shields based on the data from their scout ship. The effect was devastating. Evasive maneuvers. Admiral Zorith shouted as the first cracks vessels began to explode. Return fire on their lunar installations. But the cracks fleet, designed for overwhelming offense rather than defense, struggled to respond to the unexpected attack. Their sensors, calibrated to detect known weapons technologies, failed to properly track the origins of the human counterattack. Admiral, we've lost 60 vessels already, Commander Vrax reported, panic evident in his voice. Their weapons, they're penetrating our shields as if they weren't there. Impossible. Zorith slammed his fist on the command console. These primitives couldn't have developed such technology in a single orbital cycle. Another alarm sounded, more urgent than the last. Admiral, new contacts emerging from Earth's atmosphere and from behind their moon. The tactical display updated to show hundreds of human spacecraft rising from Earth and emerging from hidden lunar shipyards. Unlike the decoy vessels the cracks had observed earlier, these ships were sleek, advanced, and bristling with weapon systems. Full retreat, Zorith ordered. All vessels, prepare for emergency FTL jump. But it was too late. The human forces had positioned themselves to cut off the cracks' escape routes, creating a three-dimensional encirclement. What had begun as a standard conquest operation had turned into a tactical nightmare. On Earth, in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Williams and the United Earth Council watched the battle unfold on the strategic display. Chen's lunar cannons are exceeding performance expectations, the general noted with grim satisfaction. First wave of cracks vessels has been reduced by 70% and counting. Council President Okonkwo nodded. And our fleet. Admiral Hassan reports minimal casualties. The cracks didn't expect us to have spacecraft capable of engaging their vessels. Our stealth systems are working perfectly. Defense Minister Jeo studied the tactical display. The remaining cracks vessels are attempting to regroup around their flagship. They're adapting faster than we anticipated. Williams nodded. They didn't become an interstellar empire by being slow learners. Captain Rice, time to implement Phase 2. Back on the Vigilant, Alina received the Phase 2 authorization. Understood, General. Commencing synchronized attack pattern Sierra. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Wong, deploy the quantum disruptors. Target their command and control systems first. Aye, Captain. Disruptors deploying now. From the Vigilant and other defense platforms, smaller objects launched toward the Crack's fleet. These unassuming devices were perhaps humanity's most significant achievement, quantum field disruptors that interfered with the Crack's neural network command systems, temporarily severing the connections between ships. As the disruptors activated, the once coordinated Crack's fleet fell into disarray. Ship movements became erratic as captains lost communication with Central Command. Elena watched with grim satisfaction. Now, Commander Takeda, signal all Earth defense forces. Concentrated fire on isolated vessel clusters, Earth's orbital defense platforms, lunar cannons, and the newly revealed human fleet coordinated their attack with terrifying precision. Without their networked command systems, the Crack ships were unable to coordinate their defenses. One by one, then in groups, the alien vessels succumbed to the human onslaught. Admiral Zorith stared in disbelief as his fleet disintegrated around him. "How?" he whispered. "How could they have prepared so thoroughly?" His tactical officer, struggling to make sense of the chaotic sensor readings, suddenly froze. "Admiral, I'm detecting human vessels approaching from Saturn's orbit. They have the same energy signatures as our scout ships." Zorith felt cold dread wash over him. "Our scout ships? Impossible." But the evidence was undeniable. Humanity hadn't just studied the single scout ship that had delivered the ultimatum a decade ago. Somehow, they had captured and reverse-engineered multiple Crack's vessels. "We've been deceived," Zorith realized, his voice hollow. "This was never going to be a standard conquest. They've been preparing specifically for us." A new transmission came through on all frequencies, overriding the Crack's communication security. The image of Captain Elena Reyes appeared on the main view screen. "Admiral Zorith, this is Captain Reyes. Your fleet has been neutralized, and your vessels are surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This will be our only offer of mercy." Pride warred with survival instinct as Zorith considered his options. 3/4 of his fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The human weapons had proven shockingly effective against Crack's defenses. Continued resistance would only result in the complete destruction of the remaining ships. With bitter resignation, Zorith gave the order. "All vessels, power down weapons systems. Prepare for boarding." The words felt like ashes in his mouth. In the 1,000-year history of the Crack's Imperium, no conquest fleet had ever surrendered to a target species. In the Lunar Command Center, Dr. Chen watched as the Crack's vessels began powering down their systems. Around him, the control room erupted in cheers, but Chen remained solemn. His assistant approached, confusion on her face. "Doctor, we've won. Why aren't you celebrating?" Chen gestured to the display, showing the debris field of destroyed Crack ships. "Because this isn't just a victory, Lisa. This is the beginning of a new era for humanity. Today we defeated the Cracks, but there will be consequences. The galaxy now knows we exist, and that we're capable of defending ourselves." He turned to her, his expression serious. "Our work isn't over. It's just beginning." On the Vigilant, Captain Reyes received confirmation of the Crack's surrender. "General Williams, Admiral Zorith has surrendered. Request instructions regarding boarding operations." Williams' face showed the weariness of a man who had carried an enormous burden for a decade, now finally set down. "Well done, Captain. Proceed with boarding operations as planned. Priority 1 is securing their command ships and weapon systems. And the prisoners, sir. Treat them according to the first contact protocols. We're better than them, Captain. We won't resort to their methods." Elena nodded. "Understood, sir. Vigilant out." She turned to Commander Takeda. "Prepare boarding teams. Full countermeasure packages and translation systems. I want this done by the book." "Yes, Captain." As the boarding preparations continued around her, Elena took a moment to stare out at the stars. Humanity had just fought its first interstellar war and emerged victorious. But as Dr. Chen had realized, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Whatever came next, Earth had proven itself ready to take its place among the stars. Not as a conquered world, but as a force to be reckoned with. Elena activated the station-wide comm system. All personnel, this is Captain Reyes. Operation Sunburst has been successfully completed. The Crack's fleet has surrendered. She paused, searching for words equal to the moment. Today, we've shown what humanity is capable of when united against a common threat. Be proud of what we've accomplished, but remain vigilant. Our journey to the stars has just begun. As her words echoed throughout the station, boarding craft departed for the crippled Crack's vessels. Earth's first interstellar victory was nearly complete, but the reckoning was just beginning. The reckoning. The Crack's flagship, Inevitable Victory, hung in Earth orbit, surrounded by human vessels. Its once imposing silhouette now seemed diminished against the backdrop of Earth's successful defense. Within its command center, Admiral Zorith awaited the arrival of the human boarding party, his 4 eyes fixed on the airlock door as it cycled open. Captain Elena Reyes stepped through first, flanked by 6 armored security officers. Her gaze swept the command center before settling on the tall alien figure she recognized as Admiral Zorith. Despite being a prisoner, the Crack's admiral maintained a posture of imperial dignity. Admiral Zorith, Elena acknowledged with a formal nod. I am Captain Elena Reyes of Earth Defense Force. I'm here to formally accept your surrender and escort you to Earth for diplomatic discussions. The translator implanted in her ear converted the admiral's clicking response. I do not recognize this surrender, Captain. The Crack's Imperium does not surrender. We have merely ceased hostilities temporarily while we reassess the situation. Elena's expression hardened. You can call it whatever helps you sleep at night, Admiral. The fact remains that what's left of your fleet is under our control, and you will be coming with us. She gestured to her security team, who moved forward with restraint devices designed specifically for Crack's physiology, another product of Earth's decade of preparation. This is an outrage, Zorith hissed as the restraints were applied. I am an Imperial Admiral. The Empire will not tolerate this treatment of one of its highest officials. The Empire just lost an entire conquest fleet to a species you considered primitive, Elena countered. I suggest you start considering what that means for your future. As they escorted the Admiral from his ship, Elena allowed herself a moment to truly absorb what they had accomplished. The boarding operations across the remaining Crack's vessels had proceeded without major incident. Most of the alien crews had surrendered once they realized their command network had been compromised and their admiral captured. Human intelligence teams were already downloading the Crack's databases, extracting information about their technology, their empire, and the wider galactic community that Earth was now forcibly entering. 2 days later, in the United Earth Council chamber beneath Geneva, Admiral Zorith stood before humanity's leaders. The circular room, designed to accommodate representatives from all Earth nations, now held the fate of the would-be conqueror in its hands. Council President Okonkwo opened the session. Admiral Zorith of the Crack's Imperium, you stand before this council, having led an unprovoked attack on our world. Before we determine how to proceed, we have questions that require answers. Zorith, still maintaining his imperial bearing despite his captivity, responded with disdain. I am not obligated to answer to lesser species. General Williams leaned forward. Admiral, let me be clear. Your fleet has been destroyed or captured. Your crew is in our custody. Your empire is 20 light years away. Your position here is not one of strength. The general nodded to a side door, which opened to reveal a slender human with the bearing of an academic. Allow me to introduce Dr. Aisha Patel, head of our Xenological Intelligence Division. Dr. Patel approached the central podium, carrying a data tablet. Admiral Zorith, my team has been analyzing the data from your ship's computers. We've already decrypted much of it, including your military communication protocols and fleet deployments. For the first time, Zorith's composure faltered. Impossible. Our encryption is based on quantum phase algorithms that we deciphered 8 years ago. Dr. Patel interrupted. You see, Admiral, your scout ship wasn't the only contact we've had with the Crack's Imperium. She activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed images of Crack's scout ships being systematically disabled and captured by human forces over the past decade. After your first scout delivered its ultimatum, we detected and intercepted every subsequent reconnaissance mission you sent. Instead of destroying them, we captured them, studied them, and used them to learn everything about your species, your technology, and your tactics. Zoreth stared at the images in disbelief. The scouting missions, they all reported success. Dr. Patel nodded. Yes, because we allowed them to transmit falsified data back to your empire before we captured them. For 10 years, you've been receiving intelligence that we carefully crafted to lead you into a trap. The realization of how completely they had been outmaneuvered settled over the Admiral like a physical weight. You knew we were coming. You knew our tactics, our capabilities, everything. We did, General Williams confirmed, and we prepared accordingly. Council President Okonkwo resumed control of the session. Which brings us to our current situation, Admiral. Your empire believes a routine conquest operation is underway. They expect to receive news of Earth's subjugation. Instead, we intend to send them news of the Crack's Imperium's first defeat. In the observation gallery above the council chamber, Captain Rice watched the proceedings with Dr. Marcus Chen at her side. What do you think they'll do with him? Chen asked quietly. Belina considered the question. That depends on what we want our first message to the galaxy to be. If we execute him, we establish ourselves as fierce defenders who show no mercy to aggressors. And if we show mercy, then we distinguish ourselves from the Cracks. We show that humanity can be both formidable and compassionate. She turned to the scientist. What would you do, Doctor? Chen watched the alien admiral for a long moment. I've spent 10 years developing weapons to kill this kind. I've dreamed of this moment, seeing a Cracks leader answer for what they intended to do to our world. He sighed. But now that it's here, I find myself thinking about what comes after revenge. Elena nodded. The long game. Exactly. Today we defeated one fleet, but there's an empire out there with thousands more ships, countless worlds. We won this battle through preparation and surprise. We won't have those advantages again. Below them, the council continued its questioning of the admiral, extracting valuable information about the structure of the Crack's Imperium and its relationships with other species. After hours of interrogation, President Okonkwo called for a recess. Admiral Zoreth was escorted from the chamber, and the council members gathered in a separate room for deliberation. The strategic value of keeping him alive is clear, Defense Minister Zhao stated. He knows the Empire's protocols, contingency plans, command structures, information that could be crucial in future confrontations. Assuming there are future confrontations, countered the representative from the African Union. Perhaps we should consider using him as a diplomatic channel. Open negotiations with the Imperium. General Williams shook his head. Based on everything we've learned about the Cracks, they don't negotiate with species that resist them. They escalate. Once they learn what happened here, they'll send a larger force. Then perhaps we shouldn't wait for them to come to us, suggested the European Union representative. The captured Crack ships include vessels with FTL capability. We have their navigation data. We could take the initiative. President Okonkwo considered each perspective carefully. What we decide today sets our course for humanity's future among the stars. We must be both strategic and true to our principles. After hours of debate, they reached their decision. 1 week later, Captain Rice stood on the bridge of the Inevitable Justice, formerly the Crack's flagship Inevitable Victory, now recommissioned as the first vessel of Earth's interstellar navy. Through intensive study of the captured ships and interrogation of their crews, human engineers had mastered the basics of Crack's technology, including their faster-than-light dry systems. Final system checks complete, Captain, reported Commander Takeda, now serving as her first officer on this historic mission. All departments report ready for departure. Elena nodded, surveying her bridge crew, a mixture of military personnel and scientists, the vanguard of humanity's first mission beyond the solar system. Communications, status of our passenger. Lieutenant Okafor looked up from her station. Admiral Zorith is secure in his quarters, Captain. The diplomatic team is with him, preparing for the transmission. Very good. Elena settled into the command chair that had been modified for human use. Helm, take us out of Earth orbit. Set course for Nav Point Alpha. The massive vessel responded smoothly, accelerating away from Earth. On the view screen, Elena watched her homeworld recede, the blue marble that had just demonstrated its refusal to be conquered. Once they reached a position beyond the moon's orbit, Elena gave the next order. Bring the quantum transmitter online. Establish connection with the Crack's Imperial Command using the codes provided by Admiral Zorith. Minutes later, the face of a Crack's Imperial commander appeared on the main view screen, his expression shifting from expectation to shock as he recognized a human in the command chair of an Imperial vessel. This is Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth Interstellar Navy, she announced formally. I am transmitting with Admiral Zorith of your 7th Conquest Fleet. The commander's 4 eyes widened further as Zorith was escorted onto the screen, flanked by human diplomatic officers. Imperial Command. Zorith began, his voice carrying the weight of his defeat. The conquest of Earth has failed. Their defenses were significantly beyond our intelligence assessments. The 7th Fleet has been neutralized. The Imperial commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, and what Elena had learned was an expression of extreme agitation. This is impossible.